Hi everybody, it's Gina. Welcome back to the Library Mouse and welcome to a January wrap-up. The lighting is so poor in here. If it's not the window, it's this light. I need a different light. But it is what it is for now. So, what did I read in January? Let's take a look. So, I filled in my little bookshelf. And I did have a variety of books that that I read this month. And I think there's still a couple days. So I might finish A Man Called Ove by then. I don't know. But for February, I read a historical fiction. I read a middle grade fantasy. I read a memoir. I read a contemporary fiction. I read a suspense and mystery. And I read a history book. So that's a pretty wide range of genres there that I was able to get in this month. So the first book that I finished in January was this one, which I need to return to the library. This is The Girl Who Drank the Moon. It is by Kelly Barnhill, and it was the 2017, I believe, the 2017 Newbery Award winning book. As you know, fantasy is not my jam, but I really, really loved this book. Basically, there is a woman that everyone thinks is a witch who lives in the woods. She does have magic powers. And there's a town that once a year takes one of the newborn babies that has been born that year, and they leave the baby in the forest as an offering to this witch, who they believe then kills it and eats it or whatever. So what happens though is that the witch comes into the woods to take the babies, but then she takes care of them and finds them a home, a good home, until one day she finds a baby that she cannot give up and accidentally feeds her moonlight, and she becomes enmagicked, and that starts a whole series of problems with the witch, the baby, the town. It's very good. It's excellent book. The writing is very good. The characters I love. It has a great ending. Yes, so definitely worth your while. Okay, this one, Winner Winner Chicken Dinner, this is the book that I finished in a day. It is The Wife Upstairs by Freida McFadden. And I've already talked about this in a prior video. I'll link it up here. But the basic premise is a girl is hired to be this man's wife's companion. She had been hurt years before and is non-communicative. She's in a wheelchair, and he hires this girl to befriend his wife and kind of be her afternoon caretaker. The wife is more cognizant than the husband knows. She gets this friend to read her diary, pretty much, and find out some things that happened to her, and kind of as a warning to this girl that was hired, like, do not trust my husband. And I feel like it's well written. There's not a lot of extras. The plot goes along quickly. It's, for the most part, pretty believable. You know, I had my own ideas about what was going on, and then they changed, and it's a good book. I really like it. This is my first Freida McFadden book. Someone pointed out that Her books tend to be hit and miss with the public, but, you know, I rarely read book reviews because I just like to judge it by myself. So I liked it. It was a very good book. I think this one, I gave 4.5 stars to. I took it down a notch because I really didn't like the diary portion. The way she was writing it was like as a letter to her unborn children, and it seemed very unrealistic to me. But other than that, this was a really good book if you like psychological, suspenseful, non-gory thriller. Okay, so the third book that I read was The Life She Was Given. It is by Ellen Marie Wiseman. I gave this book 2.5 stars. I don't like to give books low scores. I'm generally, Ellen Marie Wiseman is an author that I really love. But this book was just really depressing for me. So the main character is a little girl. Well, she starts out as a little girl whose mother is very ashamed and embarrassed of her because of what she considers a physical deformity. And she keeps her locked away in an attic of their house. Her father is just a very weak man. He doesn't stand up to his wife. He does help by, well, he keeps her in the attic, but, you know, he brings her furniture and a kitten and toys, and he tries to make up for it in that way, but he does not actually, like, take her out of the attic and say, no, this is not happening. So one day while the father is gone, the mother decides to sell her to the circus. I believe she's like 10 maybe at the time. Tragic. So she's had a tragic life so far. She's sold into a circus where she is mistreated and abused. You think that eventually she will have some happiness in her life by meeting this man and having a baby, and then tragedy strikes again, and it's this girl cannot catch a break. It's one bad thing after another, after another, after another. Just mistreatment, sorrow, abuse. I just wanted something good to happen to her. And it doesn't. And then throw in some gruesome description of an elephant being tortured that I didn't really want to read. I skipped. Yeah, it just, it didn't, I read, I guess I read for enjoyment. And I want to come away with, even if it's a book that is supposed to open your eyes to something bad that's happening in the world, at least leave some hope. And in this book, I just felt there was no hope at all. It just was a tragic life with a tragic ending. And yeah, so that is why I gave that book 2.5 stars. The Life She Was Given by Ellen Marie Wiseman. Another book that I've read that has had mixed reviews is the book Wintering by Katherine May. The Power of Rest and Retreat in Difficult Times. So I thought that it sounded like it would very much pertain to the time period that I'm in right now. And at first I liked it. It's hard to know what to describe it. It's a memoir in a way. She winds up getting sick, and that kind of forces her into resting and retreating. And that's the part that I wanted the book to focus on. And it does at the very beginning. And then she kind of goes away from that, and it becomes more of a memoir. And she kind of looks at, well, she does look at, like C.S. Lewis and Sylvia Plath and their writings as far as retreating in difficult time periods and what you do with your life when it's in a fallow time. But I felt that it was all very vague. I guess I wanted something more specific. I did not love the last 2/3 of the book. I found myself skimming. I felt like, to me, it felt like a paper, like a dissertation, and not anything really useful to me. Nothing stood out to me at all. The only part of the book that stood out to me was when she was talking about, she had been off work because she was very sick. And she was starting to feel a tiny bit better, so she decides to take a walk along the ocean. And she's afraid that someone from work is going to see her and question, if you're out walking, why aren't you at work? And the whole idea that our worth is in our productivity, and that we shouldn't be taking time like that. If you're feeling well enough to walk, you're feeling well enough to work. And that resonated with me, and I was hoping the rest of the book would be along those lines, and it really wasn't. So that book, let me see what I gave it. I gave Wintering 3 stars. 3 stars. I think it could have been much more helpful, but I like the idea of the book. Okay, the next book that I read is The Big Door Prize by M.O. Walsh. I gave this 4 stars. This was a Dollar Tree book purchase, and it was very good. The premise is all of the characters in this book live in a small town, very stereotypical, and one day their routine is interrupted when this machine shows up in the grocery store, and it's supposed to print you out a paper with your real destiny on it, based on your DNA, because you're swabbing your mouth with a Q-tip and putting it in a slot. And out pops a paper with your name on it and your destiny. And it starts to have people question their lives. I liked that idea. The idea that if you thought you could do anything, what would you do? And these are all people whose lives have become very stale, predictable. And then they get this slip of paper, and suddenly they're like picking up new hobbies and taking risks and trying new things and changing their lifestyles, sometimes for the good, sometimes for the not good. But it was a really interesting premise. It follows multiple characters and how they deal with the slip of paper, how they question their lives, how they think about themselves as, husbands, wives, parents. And I think that the idea of people like looking back thinking, is this what my life was supposed to be? I think it brings up that big question. I thought it was very good, very well written, page turner. I liked the characters. I felt like they seemed real to me. Like honest reactions and dialogue seemed real. So I would recommend this book if you happen to be at the Dollar Tree and you find it. It's good. And finally, very quickly, this is my Letchworth State Park book. On my last video, which I'll link up here, I had a video linked there about Letchworth. I just pull this out because I think people should read more local nonfiction. I think it gives a great background into where you're living and the people who lived there. I guess it gives you an appreciation about where you live and the hardships that people had to make it possible for you to live there. So this publishing company publishes, I don't know if exclusively, but their local nonfiction books are all over our Barnes and Noble. Pretty much any town except mine, I do not have a book, but almost any city, village, town in our area has a book written about it. And you can pick them up at the local library, Barnes and Noble. This is Arcadia Press. No, Arcadia Publishing. So look it up if you're interested and see if maybe there is a book written about your area. This book I gave, I think, a 4. I think a 4. It's hard to rate nonfiction, like history books. I mean, I love the photos. So yeah, that's my plug for local history. And on that note, that is my January wrap up. I'm going to do a separate one for February. I think there's a few things that I want to do for February. And I have 3 challenges going, and I DNF the Lost Children Archive by Valeria Lucelli. That is for Books and Bookadia's book club. I got about halfway through. I had to return it to the library, and I just didn't feel like renewing it. But I will definitely still like to hear what other people say in that discussion about that book. So yeah, so I want to really focus on my challenges next month and reading what I have on my bookshelf. So look for that video. Happy reading. See you next time.